Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues in the area in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Join us now for this week's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. UNDA. It's the Latin word for wave, as in undulate. It's the word for the National Catholic Broadcasters currently meeting in Austin. Vision. In English, it's a word that represents the multi-faith broadcasting system of a variety of denominations. Today, we're pleased to have in Austin two folks representing these two religious broadcasting phenomenon. I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Southminster Presbyterian Church and your host for today's program, and really pleased to welcome these two with us. Bob Bono, who is the Director for Community Relations of Vision and on the board of UNDA, and Ann Burke from Oklahoma City, where she works with the diocese there, and here is heading up what is called the Gabriel Awards. And Ann, we're going to want to come back to that because I know the Gabriel Awards are a national recognition of excellence in broadcasting as pertaining to the religious community.
That's right.
And I think maybe we'll have you start, though, just a little bit with what you do in Oklahoma City the rest of the time.
I'm Director of Telecommunications for the Archdiocese in Oklahoma City, and that involves a whole lot of things. Basically, we receive television programs off the Catholic television network, off satellite, and we distribute those to cable companies throughout the area in Oklahoma. We also carry the vision programming and work towards getting vision on the various cable stations throughout the area. A lot of the programs that we receive off CTNA go into a video library that we make available to all the churches so that people can come and check out tapes and use them for religious education programs or the deacon education training or whatever the topic may be. We have live teleconferences. We have several live teleconferences every day or throughout the week. We have at least one a day, and people will attend those and then call in and participate in national dialogues. So we've got an awful lot going on. I'm also a producer of various documentaries that we do, and we've done documentaries as far away as Guatemala, and we've covered various things in that part of the country. We have a mission in Guatemala. We've also done documentaries in the Middle East. Just last year, before the war, I did a documentary on Christian Palestinians in that area. So we've got a variety of things going on.
Oh, I should say, it's far beyond the Sooner State in your reach.
That's right, that's right.
And I know here in Austin we have the diocese for Central Texas, and with a communication system that would be comparable to that, I would think. And around the country, each diocese might have that.
Each diocese has their own office, and they really vary depending on the state and the diocese in terms of what they have available for their people and what they're able to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bob, turning to the national scene, with this meeting in Austin, I think it's well for the local folks to know that we have here at the Marriott, this time that we're doing this broadcast, a gathering of Catholic broadcasters from around the country, and UNDA, this is your chance to tell us a little bit more about the mysteries of that.
UNDA USA, it's an organization that's now 20 years old. It's a national chapter of really a global organization where there are UNDA associations in most of the countries of the world, especially where the church would have some kind of strength. And in each country it varies just what the state of communications is, but it's always concerned with broadcasting, with the wave phenomenon, with sending out signals, whether they're radio signals or video signals. And of course, with the development of videotape now and the ease of access to video signals that come off of tape, there's a lot of that kind of activity that goes on. Here in the United States, we have about 380 members. By and large, they are persons like Ann who work for diocesan communications offices. We have a large segment who are radio or television producers, and beyond the broadcasters today, of course, there are a lot of people that are involved in cable, able to produce programming that may not be broadcast, but it does get on cable. We have a lot of members there, representatives of religious communities, and then just a smattering of other people that are interested in the work of the church in the media. And that's what UNDA tries to serve those folks.
Well, it's a kind of networking among these various producers and programs that are all connected to the Catholic Church. And yet I think you have ecumenical interests as well. I mean, this vision that I mentioned at the top of the program is something that you're very closely connected to as well, I understand. Why don't we just move into that just for a moment to have you tell us?
Well, Vision is a really adventurous enterprise that is being done on very much an ecumenical and interfaith basis. Vision is a coalition now of 28 faith groups who have formed a not-for-profit corporation to do a cable television channel, which is called Vision, V-I-S-N.
And that stands for?
The vision, in the standard English meaning of the word, vision, what one can see, interfaith satellite network.
Okay.
And that's what the acronym stands for. It's got 28 members, but 54 faith groups are represented. 2 of the members are associations of various denominations. And so it's really a unique kind of undertaking. In the ecumenical era that we happily live in, the faith groups, churches and synagogues, have found it somewhat easy to work on activities together, especially social concern activities, caring for people, pitching together to offset hunger or homelessness or whatever the case might be. It's been more difficult for the faith groups to come together in sort of their central activity of beliefs, articulations of beliefs, worship, prayer. That's a more sensitive kind of thing, and yet that is precisely what Vision is enabling the churches to do, to come together in their teaching function, in their presentation of their faith convictions, in the presentation of the values that they hold dear and the applications that those values have to the issues of life. So in that sense, Vision is really a cutting edge of the whole ecumenical and interfaith era that marks our century.
Well, I think it's safe to say that in your person, you represent both those worlds. The Catholic broadcasters, it's got its own universe, and then you've got Vision, which is this ecumenical interfaith network, cable network. And I think that with that tape that we have a little later in the show to give some indication of the range of that Vision programming, we'll have a chance to see graphically what you're talking about verbally here. I think before we do that, though, Ann, why don't you just give us a little bit of a sense of this particular part of the UNDA meeting called the Gabriel Awards. I must admit to having heard that, but not really getting a fix on it before. Can you give us a little bit more sense of that?
Sure. The Gabriel Awards have been given out each year now for 26 years. And they started with the Golden Bell Award before that by the Catholic Broadcasters Association, which then turned into UNDA USA and became the Gabriels. And the purpose for them were primarily to be given towards broadcasters throughout the country to recognize them for producing and promoting value-centered programming and programming that really uplifted the human spirit and the heart.
So it's not just programs that featured Catholic themes or content.
That's right. In fact, not very many of them do.
It's just not
specifically
going my way
Catholic
type,
or religious. No.
Okay.
No. Most of them are at least this year's awards, and I would say that's pretty true of the last 26 years. They represent a variety of programming from the various networks and affiliates throughout the country, as well as some independent producers and some people who work for various dioceses who produce programming.
Okay. What are some of the examples of that?
Let's see, this year we had like a special program on the Ceausescu regime that was produced by 2020. It's called The Shame of the Nation. And that program reached millions of people and really started a whole wave of response and education and understanding towards what was going on with the children in that country. And so it won a Gabriel because that program not only you know, educated and informed and inspired people, but it really also challenged people to do something about the problems that were going on.
Now, this is in Romania. It has
Right.
to do with the political changeover, and yet it also has to do with the moral consequences of that regime that had been there.
That's right.
And the responsibility that's now part of the world's, and so it's not religious in the sense of just talking about prayer book sort of thing. It's ethical issues. Okay.
And you'd find that on an awful lot of the stories. Some of the local stories, like there was a story from a local affiliate out of Rapid City about a young man who had always dreamed to be a train engineer. And at 26, his legs were cut off. And so the young man, the story unfolded telling about his struggle with being handicapped and trying to go on and to deal with all the struggles and the pain and to be, you know, to go on with life.
So there's an example of one individual whose
Right.
experience is sort of general interest and spiritual interest. Are you, Bob, are you connected with these Gabriel Awards as well?
Well, in a marginal kind of way, in that I'm one of the officers of UNDA, and UNDA is the organization that sponsors the Gabriel Awards, but it is a major activity of UNDA USA, and therefore there's a separate committee that deals with it, so practically I'm not directly involved. I do want to make a connection, though. I think there's two things that need to be said. One is Anne herself is a Gabriel Award winner for some of the productions that she's done, so we're talking with a person here who has competed with the best in the land and has come out among the best. And I'd like to also say that Vision, in some respects, I think, tries to be a Gabriel-style network. Excellence in what it's presenting, but not typically religious, if I can put it that way, in the sense that
not
it's
stereotypically religious, maybe.
Yes, that might be a better way to put it, in the sense that it's constant preaching, worship, teaching, religious talk, religious topics. But it's profoundly religious in that it's trying to manifest the deeply human where God is so very present in our spirituality, in the values out of which we live, in the faith with which we live, in the vision that we have as we attempt to live our lives, that is opened up by the Word of God and by the Spirit of God, but portraying that in its human manifestation and trying to do that in an excellent way that uplifts and inspires, which is what Gabriels are given for. So that's the character of Vision. To come back to your question, I'm marginally connected with the Gabriels in that I'm an officer.
What was the program that you won a Gabriel for, Anne?
Well, I've won 4 Gabriels in the past various years. I won one for a program that I produced in the Holy Land about Palestinian Christians and what their everyday life is like.
Right.
Also did a public service announcement that was done in Oklahoma, and it was to help people be more aware of prejudice that they have towards different races and people. It was about an Indian man who was trying to cash a check and couldn't get his check cashed.
Oh, I see.
I also won on a program that I did on the Indians in parts of Oklahoma, the Cheyenne and Arapaho Indians. That program was called Spirit in the Wind. And a program that I did on the Hispanic people. So there are a variety of things every year. And those were entered in the religious category for local documentaries. So
as distinct for network programming.
Right, and from religious programming on a national level. So there really is a variety of areas where people can enter into the Gabriel Awards on the national level, on the market size for, say, markets that are for the various big cities, and then smaller markets throughout the country.
Well, you know, the fact, Bob, that you brought together both what UNDA is doing is represented by the Gabriel Awards, and what Vision is doing in regard to ongoing, everyday broadcasting of religious, spiritual, moral values. I think that's the connecting link in our discussion so far today, and as you've highlighted these two organizational broadcasting efforts of the interfaith community. And I think if we look at the tape now of what Vision has given as sort of an interpretive piece for its work, we'll be able to come back to that. So let's take a look at the tape that you so graciously sent to us.
Fine.
Vision Interfaith Satellite Network. It has made reality out of what once seemed an impossible dream. Because Vision is the coming together of many faith groups to create television that celebrates the rich diversity of religious life in America. Protestant, Roman Catholic, Jewish, and Eastern Orthodox. Carried by cable systems throughout the nation, Vision has a membership that embraces 28 faith groups representing 54 denominations, and its mandate extends far beyond that of other television networks.
Here in a Middle East of arid desert wastes and infrequent valleys, 3 of the world's major religions were born.
During the Gulf War, for example, Vision presented the conflict in terms of the profound questions and intense struggle of values which so many Americans felt, but found expressed nowhere else on television.
O God, as Muslims, Jews, and Christians, we acknowledge that thou hast made of one blood all the nations of the earth.
Vision also represented its member faith groups as Edwin Newman hosted Vision's Bridging the Gulf to explore the critical role that religions play in the tensions of the Gulf region. In Eastern Europe, Vision moved swiftly to alert American viewers to the winds of change. Long before Lithuania declared its independence, Vision presented a Christmas Eve Mass from Vilnius, the first ever to be broadcast live from the Soviet Union.
The Berlin Wall has come down.
And when the wall came down in Berlin, Vision was there with a unique television report on the role of the churches in this history-making moment. And Vision was there to cover Nelson Mandela's visit to Riverside Church in New York City, an opportunity created by Vision that allowed him to speak directly to people of faith and for them to speak to him.
I am here today to say thank you.
But equally important as the special shows are Vision's regular programs, a rich and diverse expression of the life of faith in America. There's worship in many forms, from the celebration of the Jewish High Holy Days to a weekly bilingual Catholic Mass in San Antonio, from services at the Riverbend Baptist Church in Austin, Texas, to those at the Church on the Way, a four-square gospel church in California, and to those at the First Presbyterian Church in Pittsburgh. Each of Vision's member faith groups has the opportunity for a regular weekly presence on the network, like Catch the Spirit from United Methodist Communications, Life Choices from the University of Notre Dame, or Lifestyle Magazine from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And it is with this understanding that faith is expressed in many ways, that Vision offers a broad range of formats, seeking out the best in faith and values programming from around the world. Vision offers majestic sacred music from sacred spaces, family dramas.
Our shelves are full of theology. Even disbelief needs bolstering.
And documentaries dealing with the critical social issues of our time.
People come up to you after the service and say, well, how are you feeling this week? I've been thinking about you.
Balancing its coverage of general concerns are Vision's live call-in shows, which minister directly and personally. They help to heal brokenness, to give counsel, to answer questions of faith.
His disciples kept pressing him on it. Well, if Jesus didn't know, I don't know, okay?
Vision's programming is so diverse because it is strongly rooted in its commitment to reach out to all people of faith in the local communities served by cable companies. That commitment of responsibility also means that on Vision, there is no on-air fundraising, no proselytizing, no maligning of other people's beliefs. Instead, Vision represents an unprecedented coalition of national faith groups which has redefined religious television in America building bridges of faith and values within communities and between them, with a broadly based and diverse schedule of the highest quality faith and values programming. Vision is truly America's faith and values network.
Well, I find that really stimulating cross-section of programming, and two things come to mind, too, as I look at it. One has to do with the Austin connection there, in terms of Gerald Mann.
Right.
Whose worship service and then call-in show is both on this particular Vision network. And I'm sorry to say we still don't have it in Austin yet.
Well, we're working on that, though, and we hope that with time we'll be able to share what Vision offers with the Austin community.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that this picture of Mandela in Riverside Church in New York City, did I understand correctly that that was occasioned by Vision itself?
That's correct.
You created news as well as reporting news in that regard.
Well, when we think there's something there that is significant from a religious angle, but who's bringing that out? The secular media, by and large, will not bring that out. There is a definite religious dimension to the whole movement of social policy and practice in South Africa. The churches have been very involved in that. Mandela's coming gave an occasion to make that visible, but nobody was doing it. So Vision suggested that in his visit here, an event of prayer and thanksgiving be incorporated, that Vision would then telecast. And the people who were organizing his tour agreed to that. So the prayer service was scheduled at Riverside Church. We televised it. We shared it with other TV broadcast stations across the country, and it was really a very special moment.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe that's the one thing that comes to mind is I think of what is distinctive about the Vision and the UNDA movement both, and it's the fact that you're picking up on some things that are not part of the general media's reporting. And also, I think it's done without an axe to grind, is maybe the best way I can put it. That you're not out to convert anybody. You're not out to say that somehow if you're religious, you're better than if you're not religious, sort of thing. I mean, it's just sort of telling it like it is and letting the story tell itself. Is that a fair judgment of where you're coming from in your work? And
I think that's really true. I think it's the values are very strong and very clear as they come through, but they don't knock you over the head in terms of there's no preaching and saying that this is the only way and this is how you have to do things. Rather, it's examples of, you know, how people are living their lives, what are the different possibilities, where is, you know, God present in people's life, and what moves people to care for others and to do things that really make a difference.
And would I be too off base to say that it's as a counterpoint to in the era of televangelism to religion that is out to sell, in a sense?
That's right. Yeah, I would say they're very different than the typical evangelist programming that have a set agenda and points that they're trying to get across and trying to sell to people, and if you have to do these things in order to be saved. Yeah, that's not the general theme of these programs at all.
Could you add to that, Bob?
Well, I think that I would say that it's recognizing that God is active in people's lives and enabling people to become conscious of that divine movement in their lives and connect with it, and then find their own way of articulating and celebrating it, but not trying to if you will, say that your way of doing that is inadequate and wrong. So in Vision, for example, there's a very, very strong provision of no maligning of other people's faith and no proselytizing in the negative sense of trying to make you uncomfortable with the way your life with God is unfolding and saying you really ought to be doing it this way. Obviously, the whole network is trying to evangelize people in the sense of awaken them to faith, awaken them to God's presence in their lives, and get them to be living out of that kind of dynamic. The other principle that's very basic to Vision is no fundraising, that this is a service to people by the faith community, not something where we're trying to ask people to support our activity. And I've only been with Vision on staff for a year, and I've been stunned, frankly, with how protective, strongly protective, the board of directors is of not tainting that no fundraising policy, even for global emergencies. That Vision is not being used to say there's a problem in Ethiopia and there's a lot of people starving to death and please give to the, you know, the fund that you want to support. Vision is not allowing that. And it's because we want to keep it a different style of religious programming.
And the other thing that impresses me is the range of denominations that are in this. This particular program guide that came out recently had these 28 different groups that are in it, from the African Methodist Episcopal Church to the Roman Catholic Church to the Jewish New York Board of Rabbis, Salvation Army, even the Presbyterians are in there.
Even the Presbyterians, yes. It's an impressive range, and I think what is common to the range, I think one is a faith in God, and secondly, that God calls us to work together. So Vision is fundamentally open to anyone who wants to work with others to help to make God's presence in human life more visible. And those who say, well, we won't work with others, will have difficulty working with Vision, but and we can't solve that. But basically, it's an open group that is trying to draw people together to do the work of God in the world.
And just briefly, to kind of round this part of it off, what's the range of broadcasting? I mean, the audience, how many stations or cities pick this up?
Well, let's go from the big pictures. There are about 94 million TV households in the United States. About 80% of those households are passed by a cable wire. About 60% of those 80% are subscribing to cable. So that comes out to about 54 million households have cable television service in their homes. That service is provided by about 10,000 cable systems. Vision is currently on 670 of those cable systems, reaching about 10.3 million of those cabled households.
So about 10 million households.
That's correct.
Right. And some of those households are in Oklahoma City. Is that true, Ann?
That's right, and we're trying to get them distributed throughout Oklahoma on various cable companies. But right now, in the inner main part of Oklahoma City, we receive Vision on the Cox Cable Network. And so far, people have really had an excellent response to the programming that are on Vision.
I suspect the people who are watching this show are going to have an excellent response to your participation. We really appreciate your taking time from your busy schedules while you're here in Austin to be with us. And Bob Bono and Ann Burke, hope to see you again sometime here in the capital city of Texas.
We're glad to be here.
And blessings in your work.
Thank you. And thank you folks for watching today. I'm Richard Thompson, inviting you to be back for our next edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. And peace be with you. For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-76